Tywin Lannister is a beast. He effectively served as king for many years under Aerys and wielded massive influence over Robert and Joffrey. He would have continued to be the power behind the throne had he not been so horrible to Tyrion. More on that later, but that's not the point. In this video, I want to explore why Tywin was able to command so much respect, breaking down everything from his body language to his strategies. But to start, let's note where Tywin's power does not come from.
I am the king! I will punish you.
Any man who must say, I am the king, is no true king.
This is the most important sentence that Tywin ever says. According to Tywin, power does not come from telling other people that you have it. It comes from showing them. Tywin does that in many ways, and I want to start with some of the sub-communications of power, meaning the things that Tywin does with his body language and his voice. And I have to give Charles Dance here massive amounts of credit because he did a phenomenal job of acting these scenes out. So let's explore how Tywin enters crowded conversations. First off, with a boom.
I'm told we still have his sisters.
The first order of business is ransoming Sir Jaime.
No truces. We can't afford to look weak. We should march on them at once.
First, we must return to Casterly Rock to raise
They
more.
have my son!
Now, you may struggle to be heard when there's a lot of people speaking. Many of us do. You might stop and start, try to find your way in politely, and ultimately not get listened to at all. But not Tywin. He startles people by going from silent to booming in an instant. That grabs attention immediately. But what's interesting is that he often doesn't stay booming for too long. Once he has attention, he quiets right back down. This makes his quiet mode of interaction just as frightening as his booming tone, because you never know when he's going to switch.
They have my son!
Get out, all of you.
You don't need to scream like Tywin does, but the lesson of entering with a slightly louder and deeper tone is one that applies just as well to modern-day interactions. Pay attention to any group, and you'll see that the person who is listened to when there's a lot of people trying to speak is often the loudest when entering. Don't stay loud forever, though, if you're going to use this small piece of advice, because that can just be obnoxious. You may also have noticed that Tywin is very comfortable with silence. Tywin likes to use silence right after people have said something to provoke him. It gives them a few extra seconds to regret their decision to stand up to him and to sit in fear of what he might do next.
My father won the real war. He killed Prince Rhaegar. He took the crown while you hid under Casterly Rock.
The king is tired. See him to his chambers.
The silence that Tywin makes creates a stare down like you might see for boxing or UFC promotions. The first person to flinch or look away loses. And this isn't just an arbitrary rule that was made up for boxing. Flinching and breaking eye contact are built-in evolutionary tells that communicate fear, which is why they can sometimes matter even more than raw strength when it comes to a confrontation. Because when one animal isn't afraid, that's a good sign that it has an advantage that needs to be respected. Just watch this charging gorilla back off when a puny little human doesn't flinch, even though the gorilla could obviously tear him limb from limb.
Charged and charged and charged again. And I think, and I'm sure, if I would have even flinched once.
But Tywin's sub-communications of power go beyond the ape realm. His word choice is a distinctly human way of using power. He doesn't ask people what to do or make threats by saying, if you do this, then I'm going to respond like this. He tells people what they are going to do using the word will. It conveys absolute certainty that they will do as they are told. Just watch.
You will go to King's Landing.
And do what?
Rule. You will serve as Hand of the King in my stead. You'll bring that boy king to heel and his mother too, if needs be. Oh, one more thing. You will not take that whore to court. Do you understand?
The circular logic of subcommunications is kind of how they work, because when people signal through subcommunications that they have power, we assume they ought to and respond accordingly, which elicits more subcommunications of power. A similar thing occurs with Tywin's inflection at the end of sentences. It's always downward, emphasizing that this isn't a question, like this. Listen to Joffrey do the reverse, asking Tywin a question with an upward tone, kind of like this. This is great acting, which mirrors real life. When people feel nervous or lacking in power, they will naturally begin to ask questions and flip their intonation upward, like in this scene.
The council meetings in the Tower of the Hand, instead of the small council chamber.
I have, yes.
May I ask why?
Don't get me wrong, there are times when you will want to ask questions and speak with an upward inflection. For instance, players like Tyrion and Littlefinger use more subtle lines of questioning to make someone act and feel like it was their idea to do what Tyrion or Littlefinger wanted. That strategy tends to work better in modern times as well. For instance, when speaking to employees, you may prefer to say, "Could you please do this for me?" rather than demand it of them. That way they feel less put upon and happier to help you. But Tywin doesn't care if people are happy to help. His strategy is to create fear.
He might be the lowest of the Lannisters, but he's one of us. And every day that he remains a prisoner, the less our name commands respect.
So the Lion does concern himself with the opinions
No, that's not an opinion, it's a fact. If another house can seize one of our own and hold him captive with impunity, we are no longer a house to be feared.
We'll come back to that in a minute, but for now, let's look at how Tywin manipulates situations to further take the people he interacts with out of a confident state. First, he often makes people wait before he speaks to them. This is a tactic that is still used today in negotiations, and its purpose is the same. Making someone wait is a power signal, a circular one. It says, "We will do things on my time." And before the negotiation has even started, both parties have subtly agreed that the person who controls the time that the negotiation begins is more important. Check out how he stands over Tyrion when wielding power over him.
You are an ill-made, spiteful little creature, full of envy, lust, and low cunning.
Tywin is literally looking down on Tyrion, and if you've ever held a conversation while someone stood over you threatening you, you know how much more powerful this can make them seem. But people aren't always sitting and they aren't always dwarves, so another way that Tywin makes them feel his domineering presence is by invading their personal space. And he does this specifically at the exact moment that he's making his big point, so that they're more likely to react to his commands rather than resist them. Check out how he does it with Jaime here.
The future of our family will be determined in these next few months. We could establish a dynasty that will last 1,000 years. I need you to become the man you were always meant to be. Not next year, not tomorrow. Now.
Tywin almost always creates a situation where he gets the last word. This means that the conversation is closed on his terms. He does this either by commanding people to leave once he's made his point.
Speak no more of your rights to Casterly Rock. Go.
Or he does it by leaving the room as soon as he's made his point. He leaves no time or space for argument.
You can drink, you can joke, you can engage in juvenile attempts to make your father uncomfortable, but you will do your duty.
In either case, the discussion ends on the terms that Tywin and Littlefinger want it to end on. So remember, speaking last creates a lot of authority and has tremendous power. It's also likely to direct the other person's thoughts long after you've left. So, to wrap this section on body language up, check out this next clip and see how many of the specific sub-communications of power that you can count. There are a lot. Here we go.
You're still fertile, you need to marry again and breed.
I am Queen Regent, not some brood mare.
You're my daughter! You will do as I command, and you will marry Loras Tyrell.
And put an end to the disgusting rumors about you, once and for all.
Father, don't make me do it again, please.
Not another word.
My children. You disgraced the Lannister name for far too long.
Crazy how much is going on, right? Credit to Charles Dance here for nailing this portrayal. But I want to make clear, Tywin's character is not just about brute force or physical bullying. He is about strategic shows of force to keep people in line. And if you look back on the big events of the books, you'll know that things like the Red Wedding were brutal, but it left the entire realm in fear of what Tywin would do next should anyone cross him. Heck, the Martells waited nearly 20 years after Ellia's death before enacting their plot for revenge. That is the power of fear, and Tywin knows it.
The Northerners will never forget.
Good. Let them remember what happens when they march on the south.
Tywin is obviously dead at this point, which shows his only real flaw as a player in the Game of Thrones, his blind hatred of Tyrion, which may not be so blind given the paternity, but leave that aside. If Tywin had been able to see Tyrion's talents and use them for his own ends, I think that the Lannisters would still be totally dominating, with Tywin as the power behind Joffrey's